A conference that proposes to garner knowledge, gender-related knowledge, and lessons from the experiences of successful social businesses and sustainable enterprises from Kerala, India, and across the globe. A conference that aims to understand what works and what does not in the Kerala context. Welcome to the second day at the International Conference on Gender Equality, second edition being hosted in the Gender Park campus in Kozhikode. Is everyone still sleeping? So good morning to all of you and welcome to the second day. Let's set the note right for this day with an energetic start. Now, I was just looking up on quotes and ideas to start the day with. I knew that all of you will be in, a slight slumber in the morning when I start speaking. So I was just looking if there's a quote that would motivate you on sustainability, I'll be honest with you. And then I chanced upon these words. It's a Native American proverb which says that we did not inherit this earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. So this idea should be at the core of everything that we do as human beings, also, particularly as people or activists who work in the realm of gender. It's all about keeping this world, earth together for tomorrow, and that's at the core of what we do and what we think and what we speak. On that note, should we get started with the first session? Should we? If you give me a yes with an applause, I'll be happier. Thank you. So the first plenary session that's happening here, it's an all-online panel. I know that when there's no physical presence on the stage, it gets slightly challenging. I do know that, but then you're all really energetic, excited people who are really into what's happening at this conference. So I hope you will all make up for that. Yeah. So this first plenary is on leveraging innovation and maximizing social good, and this is being run entirely by Mr. Irfan Malik. He's the co-founder and director of ICGE Innovation Global Limited India, based in UAE and Australia. He actively works with the Indian community in Australia and as a young thought leader to support community building activities and cohesiveness with local Australians. So it is a collaborative effort that he leads. He's also the investor and mentor of Moonshot. It is a global pre-accelerator framework for bringing people together to solve giant challenges in the space tech and space business for awareness. So a big man who does big things, and he is heading a big panel here on a big theme. So I hand it over to Irfan Malik.
Thank you. Greetings and namaskaram to all of you there gathered, and also people who are tuning in globally, virtually on this platform, an amazing global platform that we've all curated here. Thank you again for those kind words. My name is Irfan Malik. As indicated, I'm the global CEO of ICGE Innovation Global and also the chair of Startup and Innovation at the Australia-India Business Council. I will begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are all gathered here, globally, virtually, but especially here in Australia. And I pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and the emerging. As an Australian with an Indian Malayali origin and a strong and very strong roots to Kerala, it's indeed an honor and privilege for me to be chairing this session on leveraging innovation and maximizing social good. As part of this amazing international, globally recognized conference on gender equality being organized by the Gender Park and the government of Kerala, I thank, recognize, and particularly appreciate the enormous efforts that's gone behind this event put together by Dr. Sunish and the Gender Park team, with all the support and guidance from Honorable Minister Shailaja Teacher Ji. When I was engaged for this program last year, I was deeply hopeful. I was very excited for various reasons. Definitely the cause and the passion to support this cause. But also, very importantly, I was deeply hopeful to be there in Calicut, Kozhikode, as we are called in person for this event. And for me to reconnect with the city that I grew up as a little kid. Calicut, amazing nostalgic memories that come to light of my days as a kid growing up at the Calicut University, where my late father, Padma Shri Dr. Malik Mohammed, had spent about 30 years of his life shaping and nurturing the educational fabric of the ecosystem there. My reflection is growing around strong women with my family, my mother, and 4 elder sisters around me. My travel from the Calicut University campus to my East Hill Central School every day, about an hour's journey, used to instill thoughts and several stories that reinforce strong support for strong women and gender equality. Even today, living far from Kerala, down under here, in one of the best God-gifted countries, Australia, that I call home now, I reflect and strive to champion this cause of gender equality, especially with my 2 little daughters who will experience a very different gender equality prospects as they grow into building their life and career in the future. Strangely, whilst we shouldn't be talking or be concerned about gender equality in this day and age and reflect more on gender neutrality, we do indeed need to be cognizant of gender sensitive and inclusive policies and work towards gender responsive processes and practical methods to achieve impactful outcomes. And I call it game-changing outcomes. At my organization, INCU Innovation Global, we again have been strongly influenced by women leaders and change makers as we curate a global open innovation startup ecosystem and foster global collaboration. We have a strong focus on one of our key pillars of equality, diversity, and inclusivity. I do want to recognize the role of my friend and our global ambassador at INCU Innovation, Annalie Killian, who is currently based in France and US, who's been an inspiration for me as well and INCU as we take this journey along. We strive within the organization and the ecosystem to make a conscious effort to bring startups and the innovation ecosystem on board to operate for a purpose, aligned to a purpose, a social cause. And we also help them impart gender sensitive and inclusive measures, such as introducing co-founders by design for the startups and leverage social innovation platforms, which help us all to measure collectively how we align ourselves and our cause, our purpose to UN Sustainable Development Goals, and where gender equality is a prime cause of focus for all of us. On that note, I'm pleased and honored to have a great set of global thought leaders and change makers on board for this truly international session that we've all curated together with representatives from all the way from the Americas, the Europe, Africa, Asia, and Far East to Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Island regions being represented on this session. With the focus of this conference being to spark off a conversation on inclusive social business policy, I would like to set the context of this session to perhaps focus on the 3 A's to reflect on this whole theme of gender equality. The 3 A's being awareness. How do we create an awareness or ongoing awareness of this cause and the need? The second A being the access. How do we provide access to solutions, practical methods, or processes which will be able to drive gender sensitivity, inclusiveness? And third, and very foremost, adoption. How do we help, enable, and also bring about support system for organizations, people, home, communities, government, nation, and the entire world to be able to adopt some of these best practices, learnings, and then help towards that cause of gender sensitivity and inclusivity. I would like to again acknowledge that the theme of this session would be to definitely focus on gender sensitive and gender inclusive policy and explore and draw out best practice learnings of gender responsive processes and methods through a collective global collaboration, which this session also really represents, to help us all crystallize a global policy framework with social innovation and sustainable entrepreneurship as key enablers for gender equality. During the course of this session, we have an amazing introductory talk from a globally renowned social entrepreneur. And then we will also have a moderator discussion with an elite set of esteemed panelists that we've curated of global change makers with a strong focus on gender sensitive, gender inclusive policies and experiences to share. We will also have two startups, one from Kerala and one from Australia, showcase through their startup founders representing them, who have amazing channels, who have curated amazing channels and platform to help us all, perhaps an avenue to visualize some of the potential gender responsive processes, methods to create that impact or achieve the outcome that we all strive to. Without much ado, I would like to invite our guest speaker as an introductory note, Ambarish Mitra, a self-made social entrepreneur who started off with his humble, impactful beginnings from India and now is shaping major social innovation success stories based in London, Middle East, and globally as well. Ambarish was also the co-founder of Blipper and recent years co-founder of Grey Parrot. And he's a true testimony of how to leverage innovation and emerging tech for maximizing social good. Welcome, Ambarish. Over to you to enlighten us all. Welcome.
Thank you, Irfan, and namaskar, everybody. It's an honor and privilege to be here. I never usually speak with any preparation, and particularly today's topic is very, very close to my heart. So I will speak from my heart, and of course, forgive me if I go astray. But I thought it'll be good to shape the discussion today with series of my own life's experiences, and if something you can relate to, reflect to, and we'll of course have a panel discussion later to throw more light upon it. So life is a series of experiences with ups and downs for everybody. It's a constant learning journey. And of course, the more inspirational people we meet, more interesting books we read, the more education we have, more the cloud of our biases start to disappear. But we all grow up with some factor of biases in our parenting style, in our social structure, and there are several other factors. And gender is a key factor, which is those spoken in professional nature, particularly in this context, or an empowerment nature, but it's actually really, really deep-rooted, because very often the discussions are about, equality at work and other places, but it starts right from the bottom of the society and all the way gets sort of hard-coded into our upbringing. of course, no judgments here. We've all had very different upbringings. But in my life, it has been a series of dichotomies. I grew up in an environment which was very macho and very patriarchal, and women were in the general society not considered very equal. But, and which was in a state of Bihar, in a district called Dhanbad in India, which is now under a state called Jharkhand. Of course, Bihar has a reputation in that area and several other areas. So when I was growing up in this very complicated district of mining culture and very aggressive in nature behaviorally, there were two different worlds. One world was the values and my immediate family and my parenting's values. And literally when I step out of the house, a very different set of values, which I saw in my school or in my other friends' environment. So I would see as something as simple as that when I go to my friend's place for spending the day, and which I thought was a very normal thing to do, like eating out and chilling with your friends, I would see a very different food distribution to my male friends and this compared to their sisters at home. And I never understood this, or the sister or the female parent will never eat at the table together, as if they come second in the family structure. But this wasn't the case in our household. And when it comes to our household, which was, though we were growing up in Bihar, my family comes from a very, very actually feminist and equality-oriented family. I mean, just a little side note, my grandparents, they were a very unconventional couple. My grandmother was degree educated in 1940s, and there were 5 sisters. And my grandfather, who was a modern man, in those days, if you married a degree educated woman, you were like an exceptionally modern man. You have no ego. So my grandfather married my grandmother, who was very smart and went on to become a well-known feminist in Eastern India. But my grandmother's other 4 sisters, they never found any suitors. It was almost like, like magic or witchcraft to be that smart. Of course, that was 1930s, 40s India. You would like to believe things have moved on. Of course, things have moved on, but even in the modern world, the same story of several levels of discrimination is done in very interesting ways. So continuing on, that was one India I was growing up in. And of course, when I started my first company, and I won't go into the details of how I was not in the best of environments, and I ran away from home and due to some disagreements with my parents. And I won this business plan competition along with a friend of mine in Delhi. And the first business I started was on a movement called womeninfoline.com in 1997-98, which was focusing on women empowerment in India. It was like one of the first .com websites. And why did like a 17-year-old start a business when there could be so many other cool stuff? Somewhere in my upbringing or in my subconscious, there was this thought that, men and women, at least growing up, where I was growing up, was not getting access to equal information, or the differentiation was on such a deep level where it was just not about food, it was about hygiene, it was about taking care of yourself, it's about being independent. And those deep-rooted issues, which as a 17-year-old, I thought that internet could be a great equalizer and technology could be a great equalizer. And my whole career has been around technology and having been a serial entrepreneur and investor. And I've taken several decisions to tackle this issue, but I won't say that every time I have been successful, or even my own creations hasn't created biases, which I'll address shortly. But I do believe that technology does have a significant role in creating equality between men and women. Like not many people acknowledge that, you know, in late 20th century and early 21st century, a lot of major global innovations in product. You know, I'm not talking about here technology as a software here, but we underestimate that actually objects like washing machines, microwave, dishwasher has made men and women more equal in a household than many government policies globally. You know, in the modern world, men and women share their work at home just because of incredible ease, how technology allows people to be truly equal in their household. So I feel that you can do a lot, but today everything to some extent has become technology. So as we progressed, and I founded several other companies, of course, we saw a very big gap in applications of engineering roles. And there was, of course, very large talk in the last 10, 15 years about equal opportunities, and technology is the worst sector where we see equal participation and equal opportunity. But there was a bigger issue where why weren't, it was a factor of women going through universities studying STEM education, and it was also a factor of all the way from upbringing. And why aren't, you know, more and more sort of students taking up STEM education and rather going for the arts? And then this division that men go and study certain different things and women go and study. And I think we as a society, as a recommendation, I think we also need more equal role models where to inspire people in various professions. And it goes a little more deeper. It needs to be showed even in our pop culture where, you know, like savior of the day or you know, the scientific breakthrough or the superhero, whichever way how we over celebrate individuals in movies and music videos. If you have more showcase of women in that sector, this would really change mindsets. So some of these mindsets, of course, have been set over the years by also the pop culture infusion in our lives. When I went on to build Blipper, which is one of the largest augmented reality and machine learning companies, and at that point, I'm like in my mid-30s, and I feel very confident of my ability to be equal. And at this point, already I'm being ahead of the curve by having female co-founders, and I'm being a speaker on gender issues early on. And, you know, I'm advising the UK government on it, doing all this good stuff. So I feel very good about myself and the contribution I'm doing. And then we build this algorithm of recognizing everything in the world. A very big vision, which was one of the first visual search engines in the world. And when I was trialing this algorithm, and in that position, when we held the phone and we pointed the phone at a man wearing a white coat, the AI algorithm said it's a doctor. And when the same application was put on a woman wearing a white coat, the algorithm said it's a beautician or beauty clinic something. And it absolutely shocked me. Like, how can the only two difference in the photos is the gender? Everything else environmentally exactly identical. Then it made me think, oh my God, this is a much deep-rooted issue, because this hasn't even built by humans. It has been built by large-scale bots, which is scraping the internet. And then I realized that actually the internet itself is so inherently biased that when bots and robots are being trained, they're inheriting all the preset biases set by humans already. And this is a very worrying factor that, and I'm trying to bring this discussion from another angle, that of course there are things that can be done from a policy point of view and organization setup, organization design, HR, government policies, and we will talk a lot about that. But some of these issues are a lot more deep-rooted, and there's an aspect of the future that is concerning. And of course, entrepreneurs like me and several others who are in the artificial intelligence space, we have more than ever responsibility not to pass our basically not meticulousness on this topic as something like this is AI, like what can we do? But more like take real responsibility, and things like data labeling and all needs to become gender neutral again. And the only way to move forward is like take a lot of significant effort. In terms of landscape, I particularly am an ambassador for Champions for Change community, or Accelerator, in United Kingdom. These are two very active bodies in making commitments. So in my career, at least the last 7 years, we made certain commitments, like we will have a 50% women-led management team in my respective companies. And of course, in all my businesses, we have equal partnership among women and men founders. I have particularly invested in many women founders, but it should not end there. I mean, one of my businesses became fairly large to reach like 1,000+ employees, where you lose a little track of things as an entrepreneur when things start to scale. And even that, I felt some experiences you don't realize in life unless you have it for yourself, as much you like to put yourself in other shoes. So I think one of the very big issues, and there are so many of them, which fellow speakers will talk about, but like maternity leave and paternity leave, and the importance of paternity leave as well. You know, men of course have a very big role to play in this topic. This is not at all women, and nowhere, you know, people should think that like men will fix this problem, or, you know, like we have to shift the system and not fix women. That's the big issue where, and another very big issue people have with this, like I've noticed even in a workplace when comparisons where a woman is very strong, you know, comments like, you know, a strong woman is considered masculine and a weak man is considered feminine. And what implies as if masculinity is a strong attribute and femininity is a weak attribute. So there are a lot of, even in the modern world, modern workplace, attributes and comments and behaviors which really needs to be challenged. And one of those things is workplaces cannot like marginalize women based on very important life events like parental leave and paternity leave and breastfeeding, and there's several other issues which happens in everyday work. So very consciously, as a business, we take these topics, at least in our companies, in our portfolio companies, seriously from an employee handbook level. And even though we don't reach our natural outcomes, where, you know, if I had full freedom without the board, the rules would be very different, but we, at the same time, we aspire to do significantly better than government set deadlines of, you know, 30 days leave, or, you know, we try to do 6 months leave, or there's almost paternity leave is non-existent, and men have a very big role to play in a child's upbringing, and also in liberating some free time for the woman to become a more equal partner. And of course, some Scandinavian countries are incredible role models for this, but overall, there's a lot to think about, talk about, and catch up. I'll conclude on just one interesting note, which is again from my career's observation, that future of work, women will have a significant role to play. And this is not, you know, classic talking about some AI-based scaremongering, but generally today, how the professional divide in the planet is, there as AI systems are getting smarter, a lot of today's career, which due to preset biases have already been very women-centric, like, training, nursing, teaching, the era, except those are extremely important. We've seen in COVID times how important these professions are, and they're like 70% women-led on a worldwide statistical level. But we will also see that how those professions will start to get even more valued, and there will be, of course, larger redundancies in today's world balance of men-led professions. And I think naturally artificial intelligence and sort of fourth industrial revolution and future work will swing the needle slightly in the favor, which is a good thing, because except one key thing to address, that all those women-led professions, majority are not well-paid professions either. And we as a community or as a human race have to acknowledge how we value people and how we value professions as well overall moving forward, and the pay disparity on this topic. So I'm here and I'm very committed to this topic, and I would dedicate my life and continue to do so. And I really look forward to the discussion ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amrish. Thanks for the heartwarming and impactful insights that you shared, reflecting on some of the key things that you touched on, which again was a good spark of, technology, not now, even those days when we had the microwaves and the washing machines and the fridges, they have been an enabler as well, though it was a subtle realization, contributing towards, gender parity and men and women, addressing things at household together and making it easy for them to, impart that. You reflected on changing mindsets required. That is key. And I think what also indeed you touched on as well is the need to rewire not only our human mindsets, but a conscious effort needs to go to rewire the large global digital social intelligence, data pool, machine learning, AI engines all out there, which is strongly influencing our world, our perceptions, our decision, and our thought processes. So that rewire, a conscious effort needs to be there to rewire and re-engineer that. So that's a key takeaway that I'll also reflect on. And the future of work as well, you touched on. Again, I've never been a believer of a 9 to 5. And in fact, hearing one of a strong woman who has inspired me, Indra Nui, who never believed in 9 to 5, and someone who's been actively working to change the whole future of work. I think that's something which is important for us to recognize that, and how it'll be cognizant of, women and their, work-life balance as well. Thanks again, Amrish, and we look forward to continuing this conversation and engagement with you to make a huge change and a difference for a cause that we all aspire to support. Thank you again, Amrish. Thank you. All right. On that note, I would just continuing this journey for this session, I would like to welcome Hayley Saddington, my co-moderator for this session, who's been a part of our Into Innovation global family, and a strong testimony for our efforts together to work towards women entrepreneurship and empowerment in the social innovation space. She's been an amazing social innovation woman entrepreneur and an ecosystem influencer who has helped enormously from the day I mentioned about this conference to her, and right through, helping me curate this session and bringing together such a, great and wonderful, amazing, talented speakers and panelists together. I express my sincere thanks and appreciation of your role, Hayley, and I welcome you again. Hayley's a bit of a background. Hayley's a healthcare practitioner and has had 2 successful startups in the medtech space, and is also a young global leader at the World Economic Forum from Australia. And she's been inspiration for a lot of women entrepreneurs and people aspiring for, working towards social innovation, and an active role she is playing between Australia, India as part of the Australia-India Innovation Bridge that we are working towards all. I welcome Haley again and welcome you to take this panel discussion forward as I'll follow through on the Q&A forum with this elite, esteemed panelist session that all of us are looking forward to. Over to you, Haley. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Malik. It's an absolute privilege to be here today and to moderate our esteemed panel and to join with the Gender Park and UN Women to raise global awareness toward creating better gender policies. As a social health technology entrepreneur and advocate to accelerate women in business, whereby we work with women who have ideas to support them to start their own businesses. Every day within my own global design or my business design, I have the privilege of bringing awareness to the balance in gender. I'm able to be aware of who's working in my company and bringing awareness to the empowerment actively of women. It is my hope that with these conversations, just like we're having today, that more opportunities come to women around the globe and that we focus to measuring and establishing data to determine where we need to place more efforts. I believe strongly we need to be right where we are today having this conversation because progress toward gender equality is slower than needed, especially with COVID-19 where women have been hit hard. I believe that by tackling global gender gaps, we can absolutely boost global GDP, and through advancing gender equality policies, we can add as much as $12 trillion in global growth. It is with pure excitement that we have the opportunity today to learn from and to draw from the experience of highly successful global panels. And I'm very excited to introduce them further to you. Firstly, thank you, Ambarish, for your address, coming live from Dubai today, and welcome into the panel. I would now like to introduce our audience. We'd like to introduce to our audience Ms. Fatou Bar, coming today from France. A young global leader, Fatou is also a tech entrepreneur and VC investor, currently the founder and executive chair of Django and managing partner of Django Capital. Django builds, grows and invests in Pan-African tech for good, and they champion with proven business models and inclusive social impact. At Jumia, the #1 tech unicorn in Africa to be listed on the New York Stock Exchange, Fatou served as founder and CEO in the Ivory Coast, managing director in Nigeria and member of the executive committee at Africa level, driving the performance of over 130 operations across Africa, spanning 10 plus verticals in 30 plus countries with 3,000 direct jobs and 70,000 indirect jobs, and opportunities to create for over 500,000 SMEs across Africa. Fatou is passionate about leapfrogging development through technology in Africa, in particular when it comes to women's entrepreneur and empowerment, SME growth and formalisation, as well as tackling health and education issues. So welcome, Fatou. It's a pleasure to have you on the panel today. Across to Mrs. Ria Singhal, coming today from Delhi, a pleasure to welcome you to the panel. A social entrepreneur and global thought leader on sustainability. Ria was awarded the Nari Shakti, I should explain that a little bit more. It's the highest civil and honour for women by the President of India. Ria is also a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader and an Asian 21 Young Leader. Ria is an invited member of the Confederation of Indian Industries, National Committee of Women Empowerment, CEO Forum of Air Pollution, and prior to founding EcoWare, Ria was a senior sales exec for Pfizer. Ria has attended the University of Bristol, Oxford and Harvard University, and is a vocal spokesperson for sustainability. From the UK, Ria moved to India, where she founded EcoWare with the sole aim of solving India's plastic menace. eco-ware distributor to the first disruptor of the food packaging industry. Ria, welcome. Reading through these bios, I don't know how anyone has time. Everyone is so decorated and we're so privileged to have you on board today. Over to Cynthia Castro, coming today from Costa Rica, a WEF, or World Economic Forum global leader, entrepreneur and psychologist. Cynthia is passionate about social impact, human rights and gender equality projects. Co-founder and director of social development of Boomerang Effect, a company that advises organizations on the creation of business and communication strategies with a gender equality and diverse perspective. Elected by Forbes in 2018 as one of the most powerful women of Central America, Cynthia has worked in the sustainable development strategies of over 45 communities in Costa Rica, helping them overcome economic and social inclusion. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for joining the panel. And last, but by far not least, we have Barbara Ward, representing Australia and the Pacific Islands. Barbara is a founder and director of Impact One and public health advocate. Advisory board member in the United Nations Association of Australia. Her previous senior exec roles include the MD of Anglican Retirement Villages Foundation, Sand Foundation, CEO of Austercare and Marist Community Services. She's the president of the Rotary Club of Sydney and was awarded the Paul Harris Fellow recognition in 2019. Amongst these awards, Barbara is so highly decorated with, she's received the Local Women of the Year Award, the Community Mental Health Service Award, the St. George Community Award, and the Volunteer of the Year Award in North Shore. All for her outstanding contribution and service to business, community, and the health sector. Welcome, Barbara. Thank you so much for everyone joining today. Again, outstanding panelists that we look forward to diving into your experience and stories on the topic of today. Let's briefly touch on your thoughts. I'd like to go around and talk to each panelist just briefly on your thoughts towards gender inclusivity and gender sensitivity. In terms of, towards the topic today, I'll open up to Fatoumata. What are your thoughts toward gender inclusivity and sensitivity?
Thanks so much, Hayley. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today. The topic is extremely close to my heart, similarly to Ambarish, because I do believe that gender equality is actually something that is not only, a staple, but it's actually a performance driver. And that's always how I take it, because, there have been this decade-long study of McKinsey called Women Matters. And very consistently, the last edition was actually published in 2020. It shows that when you have women at board level, at founder level, in the driving seat, companies tend to have not only a high impact on the community, but also a better performance. And the performance gap between actually the boards with the highest woman representation and the one with the lowest woman representation is at 48%. So it's huge. And specifically in Africa, it's a very important topic because you have actually the highest entrepreneurship rate for women in the world, which is at 27%. And yet we have a $42 billion funding gap to women entrepreneurs. And it's something that is, preventing us from having another $150 billion of GDP. So it's extremely unfair. And that's why as a tech entrepreneur, a female tech entrepreneur, it's important for me to be able to see how to channel more funding in women-led startups, SMEs, and one day maybe unicorns, because not only it makes sense and that's the right thing to do, but it's also better for the development of our country.
Thank you, Fatoumata. Ria, your thoughts on the topic?
So Hayley, I think it goes without saying that it's obviously the need of the hour. I believe that the impact of COVID has definitely not been gender neutral. And I think that if there's, been any more of a pertinent time to focus on an issue like this, it is now. my experience has predominantly been in manufacturing. We have a manufacturing unit where we have over 120 people, out of which 90 people are blue-collar workers. And something I've been very passionate about and worked consciously on is improving the role of women in manufacturing. We've seen that the importance of women across the organization, be it from our packing floor to our machine operators to our senior leadership team, have changed the culture of the organization for the better. We've definitely created far more impact. And I think also what's important is that, what I've been really proud of is that when we've been the first people to sort of open bank accounts and provide financial independence. And, I say this very openly, come payday, when I look at my workforce, I can promise you there are men that will not rock up the next day because they've squandered their pay on alcohol, but none of my women do that. They're there, every day, they're committed, they're willing to learn, and they're setting an example for their families and for their children, which is really, really important for me. So I think that we've got to make more of a conscious effort across the organizations, across industries and sectors, to make sure that we've set those targets, diversity and include more women. And I think that any nation, we've touched upon this with the other speakers as well, any nation's success depends on how many women you have contributing to the workforce and the economy.
Said with such great experience to draw from. So we look forward to diving more into that as well. Thanks, Ria. Cynthia, if you'd like to comment towards the topic.
I think an important aspect to think about is that not all gender inequality is the same for everyone. And myself as an entrepreneur, I've been a business owner for 7 years. My first company, I had 2 male partners, and I was the one with the least amount of shares. And one of my partners committed sexual harassment to a worker. And I had no decision to make there. I had to leave the company because of my principles, but I could not make a change there. So even when we are in power, we're still minority, and that doesn't let us address change as we want. And that's why I founded later Boomerang Effect, or in which 2 women co-owners that were trying to change this in other organizations. But I still need to consider that I am white, what Latin Americans would consider white in Latin America. I am middle high social class. I have good English. I had the opportunity to study in private school. And that's not the reality of a lot of people that are also living gender equality, that belong to a different sexual identity, a different race, a different social class. And I think the problem many times is that when we're thinking about designing policies or strategies to overcome gender inequality, we're doing it very far away from the different realities that people are living in. That's, I think, one of the most beautiful things I have learned working with rural communities, with women fishers, or people working in agriculture and tourism. And I think that's a perspective we should always have when we're thinking about these topics.
Yeah, absolutely. Incredible insights and different to the others as well, given your experience. Rob, over to you to comment on gender inclusivity and sensitivity. Oh, sorry, Barbara, I'll just get you to...
Can you hear me now?
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, look, thank you. I agree with the other panelists that we talked about, and I think often when we talk about women's issue, we tend to be in the realm of one size fits all, and it's not actually one size fits all. Gender equality and women's empowerment are really matters of fundamental human rights. And, we talk about sustainable development goals around the world. Again, we look at what's happening, and, we just talked about what happens in the workplace. And we all talk in isolation about we must empower women, we must ask them to do this or do that. But the reality is that in the workplace or in different areas that we interact in, we are alone. we actually don't, we're not there all in groups. So therefore we don't really have the masses or people, 5, 6 of us who are supporting each other. I think that we look at that sensitivity when we are doing policy around these as well. And once again, the policy, we really need to start to educate. The framework of women empowerment, be it in business or community, has to be an inclusive approach. It has to bring about change, and it needs to be well thought out and balanced approach to influence decision makers at all levels. We must think about how we're going to shape policy, but we need to disrupt the norm. We need to educate, explore key areas of what's happening. If you look at what happened during the pandemic, it has taught us so much. It became very evident that predominantly it was women in those low-paid jobs who were casuals who ended up losing their jobs. So there's just not one thing. There are layers of things that impact on women. Interestingly, I just wanted to share a story, and it's like, well, we talk about men, and I think we should include men in the decision making, because at the end of the day, it's the men who have got these barriers. So one day I was at this meeting, and one guy was saying how a partner position came up in the law firm. So one went up, so they advertised the other position, and they said, oh, they hired this girl only because they had to meet the quota. So and so should have happened. So I let him go, and I know him well. So after a little while, I said to him, "Oh, how's your daughter doing, by the way?" "Oh, she's finished. She's got distinction in her degree in law. She's actually looking for jobs now." So I said, "So you'd like her to be some high-flying lawyer, wouldn't you?" "Oh, yeah. So I said to him, "So what's stopping you from not appointing this lady to this particular role?" So you see, it's like we want our daughters, our families to grow, but yet another person's daughter or somebody comes through the door because it's a woman, we cannot go on. So, there's a lot of lessons there for us.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think it starts with absolutely everyone. That's how we're going to see this blanket, I guess, blanket across the globe. And Bruce, if we could...
if I can just... Fatima, I actually am working quite closely with your ambassador from Cote d'Ivoire in Australia. So, it's really interesting, the work that you're doing, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. Very small world indeed. Ambrish, if we go over to you, thanks so much for your address. I'd love to get your specific thoughts towards inclusivity and gender sensitivity.
Sure. From my point of view, I feel as a person, I'm more solution-centric, and I'm a big believer that if everybody keeps their garden clean, the whole city is clean. So we, of course, cannot change the whole world entirely by ourselves or by this group of people, but what little you can do. And, we very consciously make decisions and policies which is our way of making a difference. So what we are doing, like from a just basic funnel of like a recruitment point of view, like we are in the forums on our website and stuff, we do not allow people putting genders, so that there's no biases. You don't even allow biases to enter the recruitment process. But even generally, it is about, even when women are in the business, because we have other women co-founders, and also my viewpoint towards this topic, in terms of organizations need to do very consciously do this as part of the recruitment, as part of mentoring, even do employees who are slightly out of date, because you cannot blame the whole society. There has to be solutions where you do even conscious bias training. There is a whole program like that. And a lot of it is driven by where one comes from or what one's experience has been. in their lives. And also something which we all need to work towards, because we cannot change the past and we can make some impact in the present, but future is sort of still in our hands. And, how can we hardwire, gender parity in the future of work? That's where a lot of our energies, I mean, we can all pick on points how in the evolution of today's society, things have gone not the way it should have. But definitely we are more connected than ever before. We all have a voice, and there are several social changes happening around the world, not only on this topic, but on topic of race and other levels of discrimination, and just not talking about the problem, but also in every small way, coming up with solutions where at one point that needle shifts in small increments for everybody. I'm a very big believer in actions from that point of view.
I certainly agree that we all need to be action orientated as well. I'd like to drive the conversation and draw off everyone's experiences into really pragmatic things that we can drive into gender policies that are going to create real impact. Fatimata, if you wouldn't mind commenting on that.
Sure, I would love to. I think Ambarish said earlier that technology was a very powerful equalizer between men and women, and it's really something that is a very strong testimony I can make too, in the sense that in 2015, I started an initiative. I was then leading what is today the largest e-commerce platform in Africa. And we decided to make an appeal to women, but that were excluded of the workforce, so mainly housewives, and to give them a chance to be part of a program that we call the G-Force. And the idea was to be able to give them a tablet and to give them the opportunity to, sell part of our catalog and get a commission like we would be giving, an online commission to an affiliation partner. And we scaled that from 100 plus people to 45,000 people in a matter of months. But what I was much prouder of is when you interview these women, they don't tell you, I learned digital skills. They tell you, I actually managed to make an income that was quite significant because they were making twice the average income in Nigeria at that time. And they were actually claiming back their role and their economic power within their couple and within their family. And that was something extremely powerful. Yet, when we look today at the markets where we are operating, it's quite striking to see that we have more male visitors and more male shoppers, because there is, an inequality also in access to technology and access to financial services. And earlier I was making the case of access to funding. And that is why the policymakers can play a very, very strong role when it comes to having a policy landscape that is really equalizing in terms of connectivity, in terms of access to bank account, and also in terms of funding. And specifically, trying to also not talk about the problem only and be part of the solution. Having a track record as a tech entrepreneur, I decided to use my savings and raise some money. And I raised the first pilot fund 2.5 years ago. Long story short, it's delivering a performance twice higher than the highest performance that we've seen for early stage VC in Africa before. But most excitingly, as a portfolio is 80% women-led, right? So you don't actually have to choose between making the performance and driving the returns for your investors and having the social impact that you want to have. And now we are on to raising a larger scale fund where we intend to invest at least up to 50% of the proceeds to women-led businesses, because it's really something that can help them scale. And it's all the more important that the IFC shares a study showing that when it comes to women access to funding in the startup scene, looking at life cycles, people will tend to say that there is not enough pipeline, but that's not true. The study shows that at seed stage, you actually have 51% male entrepreneurs and 49% female entrepreneurs. But when you come to, for instance, Series B, Series C funding, when you are talking about big money, it's about now 90% male and 10% female. And this is what we want to really be able to contribute in solving, because again, female founders are here, they're able to create jobs for themselves, but also jobs for other men and women have a strong impact on their community, but they need more than words. They need more than accolades. They need money. They need funding.
Thank you. There's so many things there that we can practically drive into gender policies that are really going to create impact. Ria, if you want to build on that based off your experience and your region.
Sure. No, I completely agree with Fatou that I think that it's important to have targets, whether you're looking at employment, whether you're looking at funding. At the same time, I would love to see metrics being reported, right? And metrics that will, and maybe an incentive link to it if possible, but metrics that's based on like value-based impact. I know in India, I can't remember when, but at least a few years ago, there was a law that came in that said that you had to have a woman as a board member. But a lot of people did that just to tick the box. You want to see that woman, change the company or change and create a positive impact. And you want to have the right person there for the right reasons is what I'm trying to say. So, I think metrics that measure value, I think would be fantastic to see. And I think that at least in India, we see that, I'm an ambassador on the National Commission for Women as well as the Indian Women Network. And we sort of highlight agendas that are key. So something that we're working on very actively this year is STEM, to get more and more women, and not just women, but girls, college-going students, and experienced professionals into that arena of STEM, because I think it's important. And I think especially now, because we're seeing everything go digital so much more, right? Because of COVID. So I know that that's something that we're working on. But just as an employer, like I started my factory in a state called in UP, in Uttar Pradesh, in the north. And when I started my production unit, we had no women whatsoever. It was not easy. I was the only woman in my team, actually. And to be respected, to be heard, was a challenge. And then also, to create an environment where where women felt secure enough to come and work was something that consciously that we worked on as a senior leadership team, right? So now, like I said, we've achieved a 30% number. We're seeing women, across the organization at different levels, from junior to senior. And something that I've hammered in about is equal pay. I don't see why women shouldn't get paid the same for the same job. And in my experience, I feel that a lot of situations where they do the job better. But I know that I've had to create a lot of gender sensitivity within the organization, within the men that work, in my team, that allows for women to prosper in eco-work. So I know that has been a challenge for us. And I'm sure that's the same across India.
Yeah, absolutely. And even here from Australia. But I know you laugh during that, and it's because I'm sure it's been such hard work. And what I'm hearing from the panelists is this constant measure for impact. We need to measure it. There needs to be a transparency level, not a tick box of gender policy within companies. And then, make it public so people can see actually what's happening within companies.
Absolutely. And I think, I think that people should be proud of this. More importantly, you should have some sort of incentive. You should be, wearing that number and speaking out loud about it, basically. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Raise the voice. I agree. Cynthia, over to you to comment more to that, and particularly note experience from your region.
Yes, I always have an issue, and this kind of all gets a little bit sometimes in a discussion, but when public policy or any approach towards gender inequality focuses on empowerment, it's like we're telling women that they are the responsibles of the gap that exists. It's because of their lack of empowerment. And if you get empowered, you're going to change everything. And data has shown us that actually the gender gaps we have are due to unconscious bias of decision makers. That includes policymakers, that includes business leaders, etc. So I think we need to take responsibility when designing policies. So for example, for me, one main policy that we need to advance is paternity leave. How are we going to talk about gender equality if we still have policies that are saying that household tasks are only for one gender, for example? Or even I see it in my relationship. We both believe in gender equality, but if tomorrow we decide to have a kid, he is not going to have paternity leave. Therefore, I'm going to have to take care of the baby, and then we're not going to be able to divide our work 50-50%. So I think that's one task. I had the opportunity to work with the government in Costa Rica and with UN Women designing the financial inclusion strategy. And we work with the general superintendents of financial entities in the government. And what we found was, first, we didn't even have a report on gender gaps. So we didn't have the numbers to start with the strategy. So that was one of the first phases we worked on in 2009. We had the first report that would tell us how much of the credit, for example, for entrepreneurs or business owners is going to women or owners versus men owners. And also the difference that there is on building your finance history to access to the different credits, the type of services. But also then we had the challenge that there's different realities. There's different realities on digital literacy, for example. There's different realities on transportation in rural areas and if you can access or not. There's a whole cultural reality where normally the land is under the man's name instead of the female, so she cannot ask for a loan using their own property. So there was a whole process there on how we were going to build a different way to analyze if somebody could get credit or not that would be different for women, that would not have the same requisites than men. And the other thing was we then noticed that the people that work in the financial entities in banks, for example, had no gender sensitive skills and could not see, for example, that many times a man was taking advanced loans from women, asking them to make a loan and taking their money, or they were not being able to advise and protect women from economic violence also. So there was a whole strategy to design public policy for economic inclusion, but that would take into consideration the different realities. And I think the third one that is one that in our company we focus on a lot was the creation of value for gender equality. So there was a gender certification that was worked with the UNDP, and companies will have to diagnose their gaps, implement a strategy to close those gaps, and they will be audited by a third party in order to obtain the certification. And this requires them to measure everything, including their providers, their supply chain. How many women business owners versus man business owners are you buying from? So for example, let's say a big chain like Walmart, how many of the products they're buying are owned by women? And this makes a huge change, not only inside the organization, but through the whole supply chain. So I think these are like three very punctual, important policies that can have a huge impact.
I couldn't agree more. It's so integral to be developing at that level, and so interesting as well to hear what everyone's doing region to region. I do know we're running out of time. I'd very much like to hear from Barbara in terms of your view on what we can place into gender policies that create real impact. And then I'd like to really touch base on a key takeaway that we can start to implement our own gender policies in for the audience as well. Over to you, Barbara.
Okay, thank you. Look, it was really interesting to listen to Cynthia, and I too can have many examples of what goes on. But as you say, perhaps a conversation for another day. Look, for us, we've been looking. It's all fine for us to do lots of work, and sometimes I really think, we keep talking about gender equality, gender fairness, and sometimes it almost feels like, these poor women. And it's almost like everybody looks at us and feels sorry for us. And we actually don't feel sorry for us, because we're actually very strong, educated women. And even if we're not educated, we have really good common sense skills that we can bring to so many levels of our lives. So, sometimes I kind of really question, how do we actually maybe, time has come for us to remove that gender, like we want to remove the ethnicity kind of a conversation for it to be a even platform. Look, through agenda, I think what we were doing was we were trying to have a look at some of the analysis of the policies. We actually designed some evaluations with specific questions that drew out some of the intent. We looked at, targets. We looked at the scorecard that included latest figures on gender pay gaps, the industry comparisons, women's workplace. We also looked at, we all talked a lot about the economic and social differences between men and women. So, there were policies that are they intended or unintended with gender lines. The timeframes, there was a target of certain cohort with timeframes, but of course, many incidents were not reported and it went unnoticed. So, around the world, women are leading the charge, and particularly during pandemic. And as you know, that in Fiji, they've been really hard hit by COVID. Then in December, they had a major cyclone in Suva. So it destroyed a lot of things. So women there really took control of things there, and local women leaders immediately activated women's shelter weather watch, where they were sending SMS messages to alert other members in rural areas to prepare for the dangers of the storm. All the women were networking. Women were working in emergency centers to rebuild and just, showing resilience in their community and showing that they were capable to defend their own rights and leaderships and skills. They didn't wait for men to say, oh, you now need to move out. So, there were only a couple of women who worked in those emergency operations, but there was this really, really a powerful message that went across there. Now, when I worked with Austerre, and as you know, I'm on the board of UN, we were doing things like microfinance, and Cynthia, you touched on economics and microfinance. It was the same thing. Women could not get loans. Land was the big thing. Most of the time the land is owned by men, even though women have a major role in using the land for food security, income, and household resources. Statistics tell us that women only make up 13% of landowners globally. And, if they want to do anything, often they face numerous legal and social barriers in all aspects of land. So again, some of the things that we were looking at was bringing in some legal system, trying to bring in those perhaps partnership or husband, wife, or whatever to have ownership. So for us, there was a lot of monitoring. There's a lot of talking. There were often women, particularly in the rural areas, that did not want to talk about some of the challenges, like we had women who were weaving baskets and selling them. But of course, the money would then go back to men and not to them. So in Fiji, we have an enormous rise in domestic violence. And most of us know that domestic violence in some countries is part and parcel of life. So, we fundraise, and we've got something like Homes of Hope. so women can actually go there and again empowering them and nurturing them through a terrible time. So for us to measure those impacts, where how did these women come out of, and we're not talking about high-end women, because one of the things that I'm very conscious of, there are women who are doing very well, they're well-educated, they are high echelon, but there are women who are either in the middle management or lower level are the ones who are really struggling. So these are the ones that we're looking at, and we know we are making a difference, and we know what we're doing has got an impact because of the results that we've got from measuring what we're doing.
It's so interesting. I think that one of the key takeaways there is, even with women performing initiatives and coming to the front and showing such resilience, we need to really design policies that are going to protect or serve and change the gender sensitivity piece by looking at the end-to-end picture as well. So starting an initiative, but making sure the money goes back to where it needs to be, as an example that you brought up. I'd like just to get everyone's key takeaway from today, and thank you so much. This is such a valuable conversation, and we could talk for the entire next hour or two on it as well. Fatou, just starting with you there, one key takeaway or actionable tip or key thing you want everyone to know that we can implement perhaps today, or something to address gender sensitivity, your parting takeaway.
Yes, sure. I think, as we said, it's important to move fast with actions. We need to walk the talk. I really believe in the power of exemplarity. Ria was mentioning earlier how she started with 0 female to having 30% of female workforce. On my end, we are now, a VC fund that is 67% women-owned, 65% women-led, and it's important for us to be able to keep committing on funding more female fund managers, and we actually concretely fund up to 30 million euros in businesses that are founded, co-founded, or benefiting women in Africa. Thank you.
Incredible, thank you. Maria, then over to you, Ambarish.
So Haley, I think it's really important that we support each other, right? We're all each other's, we're all someone's wives, daughters, whatever it is. And I think that if you can create opportunity for other women, you should. I would love to see more men join this conversation and share their success stories on, taking that risk on that woman that's paid off. And I think lastly, you are shaping, what's going to come for the next generation. Right. Most of us have kids, and I wouldn't want my children to grow up in a world where I have a son and a daughter where they weren't both presented with the same opportunity. So, yeah.
Yeah, very powerful. Ambarish, your takeaway.
My takeaway is, I think workforce of the future has to be equitable. And to achieve that, it starts right from parenting. The focus on girl child should not be alone about, looking good and weight control and all that. It should be equal for boys and girls, to be all about aspirations to be a better human being, a creative human being, impact on the society, and not so much emphasis on looks. And I know I don't represent everybody when I make this statement, but a large part of the world thinks like that. On a professional level, I think everything which is measured works well. So I think stand behind your numbers, and one should keep sharing their lessons learned, and everybody should be committing to accelerating this as a pace of change.
Excellent. You're getting nods there from Barbara and Cynthia. Cynthia, what's your closing takeaway?
I'm on the same thought. I think measurement is the most key. But I think a lot of people, organizations, countries measure diversity and are not measuring inclusion. And diversity and inclusion is not the same thing. You can be diverse without being inclusive. You can have 50% women, 50% men, but how much power do they have? How much decision-making are they being able to do it in an organization? So I think we need to build metrics that actually measure inclusion. And second, we need to measure bias, because nobody wants to believe that they discriminate. We all resist this, and until we measure, but we need to use metrics that really measure this, like implicit association tests, because we still use self-reporting in measurements that are not telling us the truth about bias. It's like using the correct measurements for this.
Couldn't agree more. Bias certainly exists, even in the best, most aware people as well. Barbara, over to you for your takeaway.
Well, I think what we've learned today is that it's all about our self-worth. And seek out those women who go unnoticed. Seek out men who are treating women badly, and call it out. Just call it out, and that is very, very difficult to do sometimes because there are consequences. But we need to become stronger, and we need to know that we can do this without. Yes, there'll be ramification, but we're going to stand tall. So I think for me, it's been about all of us are pulling together, seek out people, help people, and for us, we think about what do we want at the end of our lives. What is it we want to leave? And even if we left it, we empowered, or we were a role model to our daughter and say, we were not going to be treated that way. That's what they saw. That's what they learned. So the next generation will actually be better.
Thank you so much. Some powerful key insights that we can all take away and start implementing today, and from such a diverse panel. Thank you so much. What an esteemed panel. I'm sure everyone would agree. And thank you so much for shining a light and providing this space for us to talk about such an important topic today. Over to Malik to
Thank you.
Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Haley. That was such an impactful panel. I've been just literally taking a lot of notes, and I'm sure obviously as we craft, our contribution towards, getting this framework organized, I've taken a lot of notes, but just reflecting on a few things. Not a tick box approach for gender policy, design policies to build resilience, technology as an equalizer, access to funding and financial services through the stages of growth of any company as well to remove disparity, financial independence, taking responsibility and accountability, setting targets, employment funding, metrics which are tracked and which are value-based to create impact, like equal pay, gender sensitive sensitivity within the organization to be a part of. Gender equality may mean different connotations, needs and wants may vary from region to region and society to society in communities. Measuring inclusion and bias, that's a key. And also to recognize that there is maybe unconscious bias of decision makers and how to really acknowledge that. Not one size fits all approaches, to be taken on board. Culturally cognizant element to reflect, land ownership metrics, legal frameworks to be established, gender classification to be avoided, to avoid any bias, hardwired gender parity, and workforce for future to create a parity as well. So a lot of things that have come out, and really appreciate the panel that you've all contributed immensely, and I seek to continue this conversation, and again seek a more active role of yours as well as we shape and work alongside the Gender Park going forward. Now, just going to the time, I might just take two questions, and I think we have one question from the Zoom chat. I think it's for Ambarish, and it's just from Shane Rebello. Ambarish, you talked about technology being a great equalizer, but in developing countries like India, technology has also spurred the divide between the haves and the have-nots, the people with access to technology and those without access to technology. How then can we depend on technology to bring relief to women in the most rural and remote pockets of the country? That's a very pertinent question. Again, yeah, over to you.
Very good and a fair question. There is definitely a digital divide, but that divide is only when any kind of a new movement comes and technology, and when we use the word technology, we talk about internet access through compatible devices. And I'm going slightly on the practical side, and I'll come on the deeper topic in a second. But cost of devices and cost of connection and all those factors are a macroeconomic factor, which is through economies of scale constantly reducing. So even as a statistic in India, if you study last 5 years data, like India is the world's fastest mobile growing country, and it is not down to just growth in the cities. It is down to the costs coming down, where more and more people are getting connected, and there are a lot of startups which are coming out, which is affecting and impacting positively from farming community to education community across literally from tier 4 cities to rural parts of India. So that's a very positive change. But on the flip side, which is leading to your questions, that today, like almost digital literacy is almost like a human right, or it should become, because the advantage as a person, it teaches you, the great thing about the internet is it teaches you learning to learn. It answers to your absolute basic curiosity. And people who don't have it, they sort of get disconnected or left behind, or do not get a lot of opportunities that people do get to figure out their lives better with internet. So it's a problem to be addressed, but I have a feeling as a factor of time, in the next 5 years, we will see that gap significantly reduced just due to macroeconomic factors.
Thank you, Amrish. I think there's an important point you made as well, and also reflecting on that, sharing some of those journeys and experience on how that can be bridged across, global regions and communities as well. That also goes a long way there. Thank you, Amrish. Now, I know it's a challenge when we have a hybrid session, most of the speakers virtual, and there's a large audience there at Kozhikode, the Gender Park facility, to engage, but definitely we wanted to reach out. So I will invite at least 1 or 2 questions from the floor at the event venue. So if we can have 1 or 2 questions max, as we are running late on the schedule anyway. If we can start off with 1 or 2 questions max from the floor, please.
Sure. Do we have a question? Yes, I see one raised hand here. Can we have a microphone passed to this lady here? Yes, there's one more coming there. I think there will be time. Okay. I'll come to you. Excuse me, sir. I'd rather give the opportunity to the lady here, because you did get a chance to ask a question yesterday, sir. Excuse me, because we have time only for 2 questions, but we'll go with this person first. Yes.
Okay, first, thank you for such an insightful discussion and global perspective. So I'm a social entrepreneurship researcher, and we have observed that a lot of social enterprises work in an environment which is rich in potential but poor on support. So how can we make sure that we are building on existing women's social capital so that it can transform into transformative capital, which is both sustainable and scalable?
Thank you for that question. I might actually, I think Cynthia, you and Fatu touched on the funding and the capital side. So maybe let me start with Fatu. Do you want to touch on and respond to that question?
Yes, sure. I'm happy to give it a try. When it comes to access to capital, as I said, it's really something that is one of the first levers that we see to be able to put more money in the value chain and in the system. One part of the question and one part of the answer is actually to have more female in asset management, in private equity, in venture capital, in investment banks, because we do believe that they will be much more sensitive to the topic of gender equality on one hand, and on the other hand, it really shows some again, exemplarity in having gender equality in every field. Second part of the question is to be able to attract more commercial capital. So what we see in Africa, for instance, is whenever you are running an impact fund or impact investment activity, you tend to have money much more easily from development finance institutions. So for instance, from European Investment Bank, African Development Bank, etc. But as I said earlier, it's important that we understand that gender equality is also a business case. It's better for the economy, and it also should attract more institutional money, such as pension funds, insurance payers, local banks, and even corporate venture capital. And we don't see that enough. So it's really something that is also a powerful lever to activate. And last but not least, when you look at the Silicon Valley, for instance, you have a wave of successful tech entrepreneurs that went ahead to be business angels and to be able to, make some bets on people that look like them. So it's very important that we also have more successful, whether they are tech entrepreneurs or non-tech entrepreneurs, but successful women entrepreneurs that can also come and unite in Business Angels Club, do, sometimes syndicated funding to be able to invest in other women. I do believe that this can be, 3 powerful ways to address this funding question.
Thank you. Cynthia, do you want to add to that from a funding cap raise perspective?
I think there's a lot of data that shows the business case that Fatuma was talking about, that shows that investing in gender equality or advancing is good business, but also it's the best strategy for sustainable development. I had the opportunity to attend a meeting in 2014 between the World Economic Forum and the Vatican to discuss how to overcome economic and social exclusion in the world. And of course, the majority were male CEOs. I was outnumbered. We were 4 Latin Americans. I was really young. I was 27 years old, I think. And it was really hard to get my point of view across the table, but I told them the data of the World Bank that shows that when we give economic income to women, they will redistribute that money more fairly than men, because since we're educated to take care of other people, that's how we use our finances. And the discussion got to the point of, well, if women will redistribute more economy, that means they're the best way. Giving economic power to women is the best way to overcome economic and social exclusion in the world. But how are we going to do this through an institution where only men can represent God? And we can't even imagine the day we'll have a woman in the role of the Pope. And I got into trouble in that meeting. But what was interesting is at the last minute, the final document that they sent the Pope signaled economic and cultural, social empowerment of women as a strategy to overcome economic and social exclusion in the world. And I was chosen to give that to the Pope after the whole controversy. So, I mean, there's enough data to defend these aspects and to get banks and different investments to invest in women. And I think what we need to do is make those numbers be heard, build those business cases, and take it to decision making.
Thank you, Cynthia. I hope that answers your question, but we'll definitely carry through the conversation. If you need to connect with any of our panelists, please reach out through the Gender Park or LinkedIn as well. Thank you. Over to the next questions on the floor.
I humbly request you to keep it really brief, and the response also to be really brief, because we are running out of time. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Ganga. I'm co-founder of a startup by name I Love 9 Months. It's a maternity-specific startup. I work with women, and we train and skill women to become birth companions. So my personal experience, the question is based on my experience, that when you empower women, we find that then they have an opinion and they start taking decisions. They want to be a part of the decisions in the family, and which makes the other half insecure. And we have had employees who had to leave the job because they were forced by the partner to leave the job. They were okay with that. So as we talk about women empowerment, do we see something where we sensitize the other side to understand how it's going to help the family as a complete unit? So are we going to see any conference where we'll be talking more on sensitization of men on women empowerment? Can we see something like that in future?
Thank you. Very thought-provoking question. Ria, it's all to you. I want to really draw upon your thoughts there, Ria. Ria,
so I think we may have dropped out, but I'd love to hear Cynthia's input on that one.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely we have to work on positive masculinities. I had the opportunity to work with Inter-American Development Bank, because the issue they were having is they have been working on domestic violence in different countries in America, but they hadn't worked on masculinity. So you have a victim of domestic violence comes into the system, but the majority of the workforce in the system of policemen, judges, lawyers, etc., are men. So if we don't work masculinity with them, the same thing. If we empower women but send them home all empowered to the men that still thinks the same way, we might even be putting them in danger. So definitely working on building positive masculinities is very necessary, but the thing is, it has to be positive male models who do this, because studies show that it does not work if we are the ones as women that are trying to teach them. And this is behavioral science studies. It has to be the presence or the contact with counter-stereotypical. So we need to find those counter-stereotypical leaders of masculinity to be role models and to mentor new forms of masculinity.
Thank you. Barbara, one quick thought from you to wrap up the question session. Barbara, we can't hear you. You're muted, Barbara.
Malik, I can't hear you at the minute.
Yep, can you hear?
Me? I can't hear you.
Okay. All right, we might just call it a wrap for this Q&A panel, because we are running short of time and we need to go switch to the Startup Showcase as well. Thank you again to the lovely esteemed panelists here. I really welcome you to continue this conversation and to connect with Gender Park and the movement that we are all part of. And thank you again, and I'll look forward to you staying around till the end of this session. Thank you. Over to the Startup Showcase. I would like to invite Tanya Abraham, the founder of the Art Outreach Society based out of Cochin, an amazing realm of startup idea, but to bring gender equality, mental health, all causes, and young children and women empowerment to the fore using art. So on that note, can we play the video now, thank you, of the Art Outreach Society? Thank you. Over to you, Tanya, if you can enlighten us quickly. I'm cognizant that we're running late. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Irfan, and thank you for having me and the organization on board. So what we do is we work with creativity and arts, visual arts as well as theater, and we work on two particular aspects concerning the human brain. One is the ability for the brain to imagine, and imagination is very key because it is a very intricate part of who we are as human beings, and that distinguishes us from the rest of the animal species. So we are able to imagine the progress that we require in our lives. That is a very important aspect. The other is for us to understand that the community that we live in, especially in Kerala, India, one, we do not really take into consideration emotional health or mental health. And when one is subject to the environment, which could be very patriarchal, also the existence of female toxicity, which is something we found in our research, which is as difficult as a very strong male-oriented attitude, the attitude of women towards women. And also, specific diseases that have sprouted because of abuse, domestic abuse, sexual abuse, whatever, trauma it might be. We work with creativity with our team of psychologists and psychiatrists to come up with specific modules that work on this aspect, where we are addressing mental health, we are helping them empower themselves through developing and supporting their emotional needs so that they can actually move on to the other side or cross the boundaries that are required to be crossed in order to simply perform something. It could be a skill, it could be performing at home as a mother or a wife or a homemaker or whatever it might be. Single mothers find it even more difficult. And we work with some men too, so that they feel empowered enough to support the women who are in their lives. And that is a very important aspect. So we use our therapy, we use movement therapy. We also develop our own particular art-based activities. Something else that we do, me as a art curator, because that is my main profession, is we have projects that refer to public art, where we provide the platform for awareness, and awareness is extremely important. And we work with children in conflict with law, we work with women in conflict with law, we work with sexually harassed rape cases, it's a gamut of activities that we work with. And what is important is, one, in a country where mental health is really not addressed, it is very important to find an alternative. It is important to see how we can cross that boundary. And it's also one very important aspect is that, when we have anything to do with imagination from a very young age, we train the human brain to be innovative in nature. And that's very important in skill building or in any entrepreneurial activity, whether it's a woman or a man. And that's something we try to instill in the children we work with, especially the less privileged communities. And when we look at that and we look at policies that are in existence, I think it's extremely important for the government and the policymakers to understand the environment, to understand the situations people are in, the gender attitudes, the patriarchal, attitudes that have been instilled in society since time immemorial. We're really battling against things, and unless we are able to be aware and understand economic differences, the opportunity differences, and empower the women and men who are in the women's lives to understand this particular aspect, to provide the necessary tools. And that's what we do. We provide the tools to help them develop what is needed to help them empower themselves economically. So we have.
Thank you, Tanya.
Yes. You're welcome.
Thank you, Tanya. We look forward to you being strongly involved with the Gender Park and the movement. And yeah, look forward to really embracing your platform of art therapy as well. Thank you, Tanya. On that note, thank you, Tanya. I invite Victor Lee of Communitaire. if we can have the next video played, please, of Communitier, which is an amazing platform from Australia, and we're looking to really launch into India to enable all the not-for-profit organizations and definitely gender equality-oriented organizations as well.
So that's essentially what we want to do, and we want to bring all 25 million Australians on board to do more good.
Victor and I both wanted to make a positive impact with our skills and experience, and Communitier was born out of our desire to give back.
My background is from the not-for-profit sector. I spent the last 10 years there, and when I was working there, I saw a real gap and real need for skilled volunteers to help build capacity for the sector. My co-founder Vincent has been a volunteer for many years, and he's found it really challenging to find the right opportunity to volunteer for. So we thought we'll put two and two together and make it really simple and convenient for people to make a difference.
The aim of Communitier is to use digital technology to create a more humane, equitable, and harmonious society.
Communitier is the social good network. Essentially, we leverage the technology behind social media platforms to really connect people and help them engage with organizations that they believe in. We want to make it really convenient and simple for everyday people to get involved in a way that they believe in and is convenient for them. We also want to make it really easy and purpose-driven for corporates to actually get involved as well, but make it a shared purpose opportunity where it's good for business and it's good for society.
We do this by connecting volunteers and supporters with the organizations who's aligned with their values and empower these people to contribute their skills, experience, time, and with that make a positive impact on the causes that these organizations champion.
On our platform, you can actually see a variety of ways that you can contribute, ranging from attending events, fundraising campaigns, volunteering projects, and so on and so forth, so that you can actually choose the way that you want to give back to society.
Specifically, we imagine our online platform as if it's a community center where people can come along regularly and check out what's been happening, speak to other like-minded individuals who share the causes that they care about, and also engage in the volunteering opportunities with not-for-profits and charities.
Since our launch in June 2018, we've collaborated with over 500 different charities. We've completed 120 projects, both online and at events, and they usually range from some output, pretty simple, straightforward projects like design a new logo or putting together a new website, to much more strategic problems where we get skilled volunteers from different organizations to come together to solve a problem like diversifying income streams or tackling a business plan. Community is essentially a crowdsourcing platform, and like all crowdsourcing platforms, it needs a crowd. So our aim for the end of this financial year is to get to a critical mass of 2,000 not-for-profits and about 100,000 users. We think that would be a very robust and fulfilling community where people can just automatically match with each other, make connections, and contribute in their own way. We want to empower people to be the change they want to see in this world, and I believe that there's actually a lot of good that's being done already. It's about gathering them together and harnessing that goodwill and channeling it into a very focused manner. So that's essentially what we want to do, and we want to bring all 25 million Australians on board to do more good.
Thank you. Over to you, Victor. Welcome on board. Amazing change maker you are with the platform. We were looking to take you global, definitely to take you to India as well and make the change and impact there in India as well. Welcome, Victor. Over to you.
Thank you, Malik. I'll keep this short and sharp. First off, Happy Lunar New Year. And I'm really privileged to be here and talk about the journey we had so far from Australia. Look, as for the video, we're essentially a tech startup that focuses on citizen engagement. And whilst taking action in the form of volunteering is a key part of what we facilitate, we really want to create greater awareness around different social issues like gender equality through storytelling and announcements from subject matter experts like the Panelist or just the charities themselves. We also want to provide a common ground, a community for like-minded organizations and people to exchange ideas, to have discussions about these social issues, and then to figure out how to actually tackle these complex issues. Finally, we want to offer a variety of ways for people to participate so that when they want to engage, when they're available, they know how to actually get onto it and actually choose the opportunity that suits their needs. Now, bringing it back to the context of gender equality, how does community as a social enterprise actually play our part to achieve this sustainable development goal? Well, there are 3 ways that we've done this historically. One is we connect and engage and mobilize corporate volunteers to support charities that are striving to achieve this goal. So we know that skill-based volunteering can really create long-term impact for these charities that are actually fighting for equal opportunity and gender equality. And that's one of the main avenues that the general public can actually get involved and promote this cause. Secondly, we know that volunteers are usually very loyal to the charities that they support, and therefore they tend to also give back in different ways, such as in donations or influence, etc. And that also furthers the mission of these not-for-profit organizations. Number 2, we provide opportunities for women to hone their skills and demonstrate their expertise through virtual volunteering. And we know from our metrics and stats that discrimination is drastically reduced in a virtual setting, as it's about getting the job done. So it actually allows a more neutral ground for women who actually can showcase their skills and almost build a social CV about what they can do. It also removes some of the geographic barriers or some cultural barriers that prevent some women from participating in these activities if they can't be present physically. And then last but not least, as a user on our platform, we provide each person with a social CV to record their contributions. In fact, in the last year, we've been working with 9 different Australia-based universities to leverage their skill-based volunteers as a pathway to employment. And women and international students is a large part of that demographic. Last bit that we're doing in terms of gender equality is we collaborate with a lot of advocacy bodies and corporates that are demonstrating best practice in the workplace to raise awareness of gender equality in itself. So our platform is essentially based on social media technology that learns about a user's behavior, and then we actually personalize the content that aligns to their social cause. So if you are new to gender equality, if you're curious about it, we actually have, an algorithm to systematically introduce different types of content, organization, and ways that people can participate to actually contribute towards the cause and then collectively achieve the SDG. And then finally, we also run quarterly campaigns that are cause-based. So last year we ran some campaigns around mental health. Right now we're running campaigns about climate action. And one of the future campaigns is actually going to be around gender equality. And we just collect not-for-profit organizations, corporates who are really behind the gender equality cause, and then facilitate a safe space for people to collaborate and showcase what different people can do and what they care about. So that's in short what we do, but I'll pass it back to you, Vali.
Thank you, Victor. Appreciate your words there, impactful change that you're making. Thank you again. Look forward to having you continue this journey with us. Whoa, what an incredible, impactful session we've had. I'm cognizant we are running short, so I'll quickly summarize the session. As we set the tone for the session to focus on gender-sensitive and gender-inclusive policies, we've heard some amazing stories, experiences shared by our esteemed global thought leaders and panelists that we've had. I sincerely thank all our esteemed panelists and speakers who've shared their experiences and really contributed their insights towards creating gender-sensitive, inclusive policy framework. Now, I want to quote our Australian ambassador for gender equality, Ambassador Guerra's words: "What's good for gender equality is good for global economy and good for global society." So that's something which is going to be a driver as part of our contribution. I again want to thank and congratulate the Gender Park team, the organizing team, Government of Kerala for this great initiative and the impactful ICGE conference that you've all put together. We strive to truly leverage innovation and the transformative power of social good. And beyond that, as the COVID pandemic has taught us all, which has been an awakening for all of us. As global citizens, we all need to come together, strive and maximize the potential of social good and hashtag humanity for good. Thank you on that note. Stay tuned and stay safe and enjoy the rest of the sessions that follow at the conference. And I look forward to working with you and continue this journey and look forward to the road ahead as well. Thank you again. Namaskar and greetings again. Thank you from Australia, and looking forward to staying in touch. Thank you. Thanks, Ellie, and the rest of the team as well. Thank you.
Everyone, I request the applause to be louder because this man single-handedly put this panel together and also coordinated all the guests, everything. Thank you for making this happen, Irfan Malik and all the other participants in the panel. Thank you.
I want to definitely recognize Haley as well, who's been a champion with me. Thank you all, and look forward to being in touch and seeing you in Kozhikode sometime soon.
Yes.
Next time I'm there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Apologies to you, sir. We couldn't take your question because we do promise to give you access to the panel and the email addresses. Yeah, we're going for a tea break. Tea break എന്നൊന്നും പറയുന്നില്ല. You need to grab your cup of tea and coffee and come back because, as you know, we are really running late, almost half an hour. And since we have online sessions going on, we really need to keep the time because there are people waiting all over the world, online already checked in. So quickly get your coffee and tea and come right back in. We're getting started with our next plenary session right away, soon after you come in. So